Hello everyone, this is Victoria Honorado with Family Legal Action Foundation. Thank you for joining us once again. Before we get started, I'd like you to please get out paper and pencil and write down this information really quick. If you'd like to contact us for any reason, to get involved, to support a family, to support our cause, to ask any questions if you need help or if you have answers, whatever it might be, please feel free to contact us at this information, and you can email me at familylegalaction@gmail.com. All right, today we have a wonderful guest with us today, John Panko. He is an alienated dad, and he has not only a story, but he also has a message for fathers. And I am just so honored and pleased to have him come on with us because it's so important for other dads out there and some moms who are alienated from their children due to corrupt family law courts and the illegal kidnapping we have of our children, protective services that are taking our children unlawfully, and it's just a really difficult situation our American citizens are in. So welcome, John. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Victoria.
You're welcome. So let's just fast forward this a little bit for everybody. You were a stay-at-home dad for about 5 years, and you have
correct.
2 children.
Correct.
A boy and a girl. And how old is your daughter right now?
My daughter's 14 and my son is 10.
Okay, and when was the last time that you saw them?
August 15th will be 3 years.
3 years. 3 years of no contact.
No contact.
Okay, but you have a visitation order. You have a visitation order that you're not able to enforce or to abide by because you're not being allowed.
Well, it's an unvisitation order. I am not allowed to contact my children in any way.
But you had a visitation order.
I did have a visitation order. I had what's called the Disneyland, which is every other weekend, and Wednesdays for 3 hours. And it took me several years of fighting to get that.
Okay.
And after 5 years, the judge that I had retired and got a new judge.
Okay.
And then my ex and her attorney started chipping away at my visitation order.
Right.
And finally...
Something that you already had in place.
Something that I already had in place.
Were you seeing the children at all at the time that you had that visitation order?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
so you were there. It was being enforced. You were actually abiding by the court order, and you were seeing your kids.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit to when it first all started. So after about 5 years, then the relationship deteriorated. You weren't married. And you had these 2 children, and the next thing you know is that you're in family law court.
Correct.
And now you're facing a custody situation, and the thing is being a stay-at-home parent, as John was, and so many fathers of today's day are, he was faced with a situation of not having employment. That was the arrangement that they made. She worked, he did not. He took care of the children from the day they were born, and that is how it played out. Then the child custody came along, and you found yourself in a child custody case with the courts, and the next thing you know is that you're being informed of a civil contempt order. And what happened with that when you got that?
All right, so when I came to court, I was, as most people are, under the impression that I would walk in there and be able to have access to my children half of the time.
Okay.
I mean, I come to find out that I had absolutely no rights.
Okay.
I had no rights to see the children, so you have to start from actually not 0, but below 0.
Sure.
And so, that took several years to get my every other weekend.
Right.
And Wednesday evenings. But as you said, I was a full-time stay-at-home dad for 5 years. But as soon as I went into court to be a father, to be in my children's lives, I was asked to pay child support.
Okay.
And so I did that for several years from savings and from credit cards. And
so because you didn't have employment, you didn't have a job, and so now you're faced with this where You have no income, you have nothing, so whatever little bit was saved up was through the relationship or your
Correct.
time together.
Yeah,
Okay.
the judge automatically assumed that I was the breadwinner, and
Okay.
the judge had all this information, but still, I was the one that, because I left an abusive relationship, she had custody of the children.
But the abuse wasn't you abusing her, it was the other way around.
Right.
You were the one who was being abused.
Yes.
For domestic violence.
I am a victim of domestic violence.
Okay,
I just
okay.
want to touch on this briefly because I know it's important for it to...
Talk to our audience about it.
It's
and tell
important
them-
for it to be out there that men are victims of domestic violence on almost an equal level as women are in terms of percentage. And I don't want to take too much time with this because we're going to talk about parental alienation, but let me
Okay,
just say
hold
that...
on 1 second, we have a caller coming in. Go ahead, caller, what's your question?
Yes, ma'am. This is Ray, and I called last week, but I couldn't get to you in time. I want to ask you why you have to be right on everything you say, because you're not. And I'm going to prove to you right now.
Well, okay, before you go any further, Ray, you know, I'm not quite sure what you mean. I have to be right on everything I say. Whatever I discuss is based on studies, statistics, personal experience, and those like John who are in situations. So
Have you ever-
it's not a
okay,
matter of
have you
having to
ever been
prove
in
that
that-
I'm right on everything
ever
that I
been in that-
say. That's not
Have
what
you
it
ever been in
is.
that situation yourself? No. You take it out of books. But let me just say this. You said
I'm really having difficulty hearing you. There's no volume. Hang on, I'm going to give you back to my producer and you can give him the question that you have. Thanks for calling in, Ray. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, John, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say that domestic violence, it doesn't have a gender, doesn't have a religion, it doesn't have a skin color, it doesn't have an income. It can happen to men equally as much as women, and all across every spectrum. So that's I just want to say about that, about domestic violence.
Okay, absolutely, and it's important because it is men and women, and it's not always about being a domestic violence victim myself. It's not always about the physical abuse, which in my case it was all of the above, but a lot of the times it is emotional and mental abuse.
And can also be, can also be financial.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that can be just as destructive. I mean, abuse is abuse, and there are so many different levels, and there are so many studies out there to prove all of the different types of domestic violence that there is out there. So, you know, if you are a dad and you are a man and you are a victim of this kind of abuse, please know that you are not alone, okay? And it really, it takes a lot for you guys to come forward with it, but you know, it's like anything else. It's time to come out of the closet. We're not going to keep this stuff secret anymore. It needs to come out. It needs to be told. And you know what? Your life is just as important as your children and the rest of your family. It is always a concern when there is something going on. You should never have to hold it within or to yourself. So getting back to your situation now.
Can I just touch on one thing that you brought up in terms of it's not just violent. Experts widely agree that sustained emotional abuse is just as devastating and destructive as physical abuse.
Absolutely.
So you don't have to have a black eye or a broken arm to be a victim of domestic abuse. I just wanted to make that
No,
clear.
absolutely, you're right, because the fact that a lot of people are coming up, not coming up with, but actually are experiencing the PTSD is a perfect example that it doesn't have to be always physical. We have another caller coming in. Caller, you have a question?
Good evening, Victoria. Good evening, John. How you doing?
Good
We are doing
evening.
fine, thank you.
John, I'd like to ask you a question. How old are your children?
My daughter is 14 and my son is 10.
Okay. And how long were you married to this woman?
Well, we actually were never married. We cohabitated, but We
But the-
lived together for 5 years, and we dated for 2 years before that.
But those are biologically your children.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Now, what's stopping you from being able to redo be able to visitation and get back to getting into your children's life again? What did they want you to do, the courts? I mean, what do they expect? I mean, did you get yourself a job, or will you have a chance of getting back into their lives? Listen, sir, I grew up all my life without a mother or a father. My mother died when I was 8, and my father died when I was 10, so I know what it's like not to have a mom and dad. I cry all the time on Mother's and Father's Day. But you're a father to this 14-year-old child and this 10-year-old child. I know they got to love you. You seem like a very nice man on TV, and you're sitting next to a professional woman, that Victoria. Any help you need, I guarantee you that woman knows what she's talking about. She's a tough little cookie. I really enjoy watching you, Victoria.
Thank you so much.
But back to you, John. I'm going to pray for you. What do you have to do to get back to see your children?
All right, we're gonna cut your call and we're going to explain it because we do have part of the story to tell.
Right.
So kick back and listen to us, and we're definitely going to let you know what happened next.
Wait, Victoria, my question is to John is, if you straighten up or do whatever you have to do, will you have another chance to get back with your children?
Well, actually, it's not even a matter of that because he does have a job and he is trying to. The problem is it's finances to not be able to afford an attorney, and we're going to get to that part of what she's done to falsify allegations to get an order of protection and remove him from his children's lives.
Well, this ex-wife or ex-lady of his got pretty hold strong on him to hold this situation back with these kids.
Well, it comes down truly to an abuse of the courts, and the courts are the ones who should be challenging and recognizing this. But the problem with our corrupt family law courts is that they're not asking for evidence. They're not asking anyone to prove that this man did anything to warrant him not to see his children. So if the mom says or dad says, whoever the parent might be says, "Oh my goodness, well, you know what? He called me a jerk on the phone, and I'm really afraid to be around him, and I really don't want to be there, so therefore I need an order of protection." Well, what do you think's going to happen when they get that order of protection? If they can't go by the mom or dad, then they're not going to be allowed to go near the children, because how is he going to get the children from the mom or dad, either parent get the children from the other parent, without going to them? And then that comes down to having to involve another entity, which means a go-between.
A foster parent.
But no, I mean like a mediator, like a middle person that will say, okay, well, I'll come in and John, Mrs. X could give me the children and we'll give them to John. But you know what? When that solution comes up,
right,
the other side doesn't want to deal with a good solution. They need to keep chaos going.
Well,
here's
what they need to do in John's situation. If he's going to go visit his kids, have one of those people go with him from the courts, so he can sit down and have ice cream or candy with those kids and show those courts, I'm not an abusive father. The lady that I lived with was an abusive mother.
You hit it on the head, but you know what? We can't seem to get people to understand that is the solution. Because you know what? All of our public servants, they don't have the time of day for us. We're just average American citizens that they can extort money from using our children to do it, which is...
I know, Victoria. The money never goes where it's supposed to.
Right?
In Chicago.
Right?
Listen, John, let me get off the phone for you.
Thank you, love.
If you get a chance to get your kids back, you hold them tight, you hear?
And our foundation is going to help him do that. We are going to fight and try to help him. Thank you for calling in, love.
Wait. Can I ask you one last question?
Sure.
What about these babies coming from Mexico? Are they here in Chicago?
They're in every single state of the United States, love.
And do you think they'll actually get back with their parents, or will we be able to adopt these kids?
Well, we're hoping they will be able to go back with their parents because no children should be separated from their parents, which is really what's going on in this country. American children are being separated from parents and nobody is even talking about it.
I saw it last night. A woman had her papers. She went through the process. She was incarcerated for 2 months. She went to the place where her child was with paper in hand, and they still wouldn't give her child back. So they're going to straighten that out. They're going to have to. Absolutely. It was a pleasure talking to you. God bless both of you.
Thank you. God bless you
Good night,
too.
sweetheart.
Thank you so much. We'll talk again. So let's try and clarify a little bit. We got a few minutes left yet. So I'm gonna fast forward this for you so I can let them know. So what happened was you got the civil contempt order. You went to court. Because you didn't have a job, because you were a stay-at-home dad and you used up all your savings, you had used that money to pay back child support. So now she wants money from you knowing you don't have any. So you come up with the money, you scrape it all together, you borrow whatever you needed to complete it, and 6 months later you're faced with the same thing because in the meantime you're looking for a job. Maybe you were even working at that point, but there wasn't enough to catch up with what you had to owe. So whatever the judge did not take into consideration that you were a stay-at-home dad, didn't care that you were a stay-at-home dad. Now, if the roles had been reversed and you were a mom, it wouldn't have been a big deal because dad would have had to pay child support so she could have her living off of his money. But now it's changed. You're the man, you don't have an income, she gets the children, and you're forced to pay child support with monies you don't have.
Exactly.
So now
it's completely it was completely gender focused, and that
Sure.
was I was automatically assumed to be the breadwinner in the family. Therefore, I was the one that they came after for the child support.
Do you feel it was discrimination, you being a man, that you were not capable of taking care of your children in the court's eyes, even though they knew you were a stay-at-home dad for 5 years, but all of a sudden you were no longer capable of taking care of your children? You're now a visitor.
Right.
You're now a visitor.
Well, it's one day I am taking care of my children, and because I decided to leave an abusive relationship, and now I'm in court, now I'm no longer able to take care of my children.
Right.
Or now I'm not able to be around my children. And I do want to say that in 7 years of going through the family courts, not once have I ever been found negligent, abusive, anything negative.
And
nothing.
you don't have a police record.
I do not have a
There's
police
no
record.
drug, no alcohol, there's nothing, all of that.
They
there's
had
no-
me hair follicle negative,
Right.
random urine tests all negative. But when she was random urine tested from the second judge, she proved positive. One, because she failed to produce a sample, and two, she never even showed up. But nothing was ever done. So
Right.
I provided my samples, mine were negative. I still didn't get to see my children, and nothing was done to her for
Right.
not complying with the court order.
Right,
because
right.
She didn't show up.
Right. So she
She
violated a
the
court order. Okay,
Absolutely.
got it. So now we get past all of that. Another 6 months goes by. We're fast forwarding it again, and the same thing happens. Now you're paying child support, but you're behind a little bit. And what happens? They file a civil contempt against you again. But this time, the judge decides he's going to put you in jail. So they put you in jail. You're able to scrape together the money to get out. You get out. You pay what you can. Now you're behind on child support. Then turns out that they suspend your driver's license. So now you can't drive the car that you have to go to work. And then you find out that the job you had found, you no longer have a job. You don't have a driver's license. Now you can't drive to go find another job, and you have no way to get an income. So the state is telling you need to do something. You're trying to comply, but at the same time now they are punishing you for being poor, not having money, and telling you that you have to meet criteria, otherwise they're going to chain you to a jail cell, which is what they did. So then after he got punished for not having money and being poor and didn't take into consideration he was a stay-at-home dad, they then took away his driver's license, which is actually it's not a law to have a license. It's a luxury. It's something that you really don't need to have by law to have a driver's license to drive your vehicle. But now they're hanging that over your head and saying that we're going to take your driver's license away. So it's just one punishment after another. They're not trying to find solutions or programs to help dads in these situations. It's discrimination all the way around. So then after you had your visitation order, then all of a sudden you find out that she moved far away, so now you can't drive your car because you don't have a driver's license. You can't drive the hour and a half to the suburbs she moved into.
Right.
So now you can't visit your children, and she's refusing them to bring them back to you.
Right. They live in an unincorporated area, so there's no public transportation.
Right.
So I couldn't drive my car, so I couldn't see my visitation. I couldn't exercise my visitation. So then her and her attorney come into court and they say to the judge, he's not exercising his visitation. And the judge says, well, we're taking that visitation away from you because you're not using it.
Right.
And-
But any no explanation of why you couldn't, or that she moved so far away and didn't order her to at least bring the kids halfway to you, or
Didn't want to hear that I didn't have a license. Didn't want to hear that they moved to an unincorporated area. That there is
No public transportation.
no way that I can possibly get there to see my children.
And so then they also
made it that way,
Right.
And then they take your children away because you can't see your children.
So then she went and got a falsified order of protection for whatever reason that she said, and then you couldn't see the children. Did they use this excuse of you not seeing the children to get the order of protection? What was the reasoning for that?
They never got an order of protection for me.
Oh, they didn't?
No.
So how did they stop you from seeing the children?
Because I wasn't exercising my
I
visitation.
see. So because they just stopped it all together.
They go to court and they say, Your Honor,
So they terminated your rights.
He's not taking advantage of his time with the children. And so the judge says, well, you're not using that time with the children, we're taking that time away from you.
So instead of trying to find a solution to make sure your children are in your life, they took your children away from you and terminated you that's judicial abuse.
Well, what it is it's
You didn't
parental-
do anything wrong to your children, but they
Nothing.
took your kids from you and they're forcing you to pay child support and then put you in jail and take away your license. So it's just one punishment after another.
Yes, and what they do is they attack the poor because the poor can't fight back.
Correct, absolutely.
So the poor are easy targets.
Right.
They can't fight back, and they have very little recourse under the law.
Well, John, we're running out of time, and I want to thank you for being with us. I thank you for coming forward today, but we're not done yet.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, and I know you'll come back again for us and keep an update. So I would like, before we leave out, I would like to say, this is my message to all of you dads and some moms. If anybody would like to come on show with me, and you would like to tell your story, you would like to answer questions, you would like to offer some help to other fathers going through this nightmare, it's not about the parents. It's about the children. Those are the ones who are suffering. These children, this is long-term damage. And not that it's any easier for the parents or the grandparents. This is long-term damage to these children. This is not how we are going to make them functional and responsible in life. This is damaging them to have hatred and anger in their lives, in their hearts and their minds.
It's just the opposite of making them functional. It's making them dysfunctional.
Absolutely dysfunctional. So I would like to put the invitation out there. If anyone would like to come on with me, I ask you, I'm going to do real quick, please write this information down. Okay, you can contact me at the website, FamilyLegalActionFoundation.com. You could go to my Facebook page, and you can get me by email, FamilyLegalAction@gmail.com. Okay, and so one last thing I would like to ask John, if you had anything to say to your children right now, if they were watching, what would you say to them?
I love you. I've always loved you. I've never stopped loving you. I want to be in your lives, but there are forces here at work much greater than all of us that are preventing that. But I want you to know that I'm never going to stop being your father, and I'm never going to stop to try to be your father and in your lives.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here with us, and we will see you again very soon. Please contact me if you'd like to come on with me. Thank you.